Hi, Janine.
Testing. Testing. Gonna
Hello.
call you.
How are you?
Hello.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Amy.
So,
Hi, Janine.
Janine, who did you say is not going to be able to join us?
Well, Alan Goodrich,
Okay.
he had a unexpected conflict.
Okay. I knew there was
But
one person. Okay.
yeah,
All right.
I told him I'll still be ready for him in the event he's able to join us, but it doesn't look that way.
Okay. Amy, do you have any need to share your screen?
I will, yes.
Okay,
Okay.
you should be able to do that. I think Zoom's easier than Teams to share your screen. Are you okay?
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Can you tell me how long each person is getting?
You could take like up to 15 minutes because it's gonna be four people.
Yeah.
And so what I was planning on doing, just so that everybody gets an opportunity to share, I was gonna have the presenters talk first, and then I was gonna just tell the attendees if they can wait until after all of the presenters present, and then ask questions for like the last, I guess, 30 to 40 minutes, depending how long each presenter is.
Okay.
But the same email that I sent you, Amy, I also sent the others to kind of just let them know what the format was and, and kind of the items that I'm hoping you can touch on just for
Yeah.
the first conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And
Um,
if your materials, whatever you're going to be sharing, if that's able to be shared with the other bar members, just let me know. And
I'm not sure if I'm not positive whether or not I can provide, I may be
okay,
able to. I'll have to ask.
okay, that's fine.
But there are some links in the there are some links in in it. So I just have to get a confirmation that I can share it, but
That's
I believe
fine.
the
That's
answer is
fine.
yes.
That's fine. I'll just won't say that the materials are available. And if somebody asks, just let them know that you just need to make sure you get confirmation.
Yeah.
Ooh, all right. Oh, Janine, there's another Janine Scott in. It's probably Stacy or William.
Let's see. Yeah, that's Stacy.
All right.
Stacy.
I have
You're
two
showing
cameras.
you're showing up as me. So they're gonna change your name because I had given you, I guess, my
Okay.
but Rachel's gonna change you. Rachel, do you have Stacy's spelling or do you need me to give that to you?
All done.
It's AMPARL.
Ah, I got cocky.
Close.
Was it wrong on the flyer? It was. Nobody corrected us.
Oh, really? I didn't realize it. Sorry, Stacy.
All good, no worries. I think on my phone it actually shows
I
up.
just liked everyone's photo shots. It was some nice headshots.
Yeah, it shows up on my phone as AMPARA, so.
You get everything. Okay.
So it's
Stacy,
Amparo or Amparo?
Amparo,
Amparo, thank you.
sure.
Sorry, Rachel, you were about to say something?
just want to make sure Stacy was okay. Do you need to share your screen at all today?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Oh, we have another Janine Scott.
That's probably Bill. That's probably Bill. Susan, I think, registered under her own name. That's gotta be Bill. Yep.
Yes.
Hi,
Good.
Bill. You
Hello.
have my name
I know. I wonder why that. Oh,
because I gave you my link. I thought it was just a general one, but they're gonna change it. Do you want William Steinwaddle or Bill?
Williams. What? Bill Steinwaddle's fine.
Okay.
Rachel, do you need me to spell Steinwaddle for you?
No, well,
Got
if
the-
it's correct
the
on the
flyer?
flyer, then I got it.
I think so. Let me look right here.
Bill, does that look good?
Yeah,
Yes.
the flyer's right.
Perfect. All right. So everybody's here.
Susan
Janine-
Parks, she should be coming on. I think
Oh.
she should be registered under her own name.
There's Sue Parks. Sorry, I think I missed her somehow on the. I didn't see her on the flyer.
But she's in, and I guess fortunately, since Alan's out, we have our
Perfect.
four.
Okay.
Hi,
Sorry
Susan.
to make you wait. I apologize for that.
That's good.
So everybody here is comfortable
Presenter. Okay,
presenting. Yep. Sharing your screen if you need to, just the green button at the bottom. We'll have folks type questions into chat, but also hold their questions until everyone's finished.
right, I'll let people know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So just so that all of you know, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be a presenter. I just want to let everybody know that I'm just gonna allow each of you up to, 10 to 15 minutes, to share. I gave you an email on some of the points that, I'm hoping that you'll bring up. And I'm gonna tell the attendees to hold their questions till after each of you give your presentation. And then after that is done, then I'm gonna open it up for the attendees to ask questions. What was I gonna say again? Do any of you all have any questions for me?
No?
Okay, all right.
What are the other topics folks were asked to present on?
Okay, well, so Bill, he is our bankruptcy person. And
Mhm.
so what I asked Bill was to really touch upon was the about student loans and bankruptcies, discharges, how hard it is, and also, Bill has worked on some cases involving student loan debt. So for him to share a bit about that, but basically the bankruptcy piece and how student loans are treated. Stacy, she actually paid off her student loan debt as well as her husband. So she's going to be sharing as a public interest or a state's attorney or working in government and public interest, I should say. So she'll be talking about how she managed to make student loan payments while working in public interest. And also taking advantage of or being able to succeed under the public student loan forgiveness program. And Susan Parks also, she assisted in navigating her children to successfully pay off their student loans. So she's also going to provide some, tidbits and some points on that. Unfortunately, Alan, he was one who wasn't able to take advantage or wasn't able to avail himself of the public interest student loan despite his career in public service. So he was gonna share what went wrong, just with the hopes
Did he have,
of,
did he have Fell loans?
I don't know all the details, but I think, but one of the things that he did share was he wasn't in the correct loan. And so
Okay.
for him, it didn't make sense for him to change his loans, I guess, until I call the direct loan, I believe it is.
Yeah, he had Fell
because-
loans. Okay.
Because it would have started the clock for him, and he just
Yep.
didn't want to take the chance and start the clock and something gets screwed up. So he was gonna, you know, talk about making sure that people have the actual correct loan, because my understanding was when that 10-year first came in like 2017, people who thought when they signed up in 2007 and worked in public interest, they were told they were in the incorrect loan.
Yep.
So that kind of messed up a lot of people, and that happened to Alan. So he was going to talk a bit about that, but unfortunately he had a conflict, so he couldn't be there. But that's overall just in terms of what the, and also just for the other attendees, Amy as the student loan ombudsman for the Maryland Office of Financial Regulation will be, you know, talking about what she does in her position as the ombudsman, and you know, what she's seeing in terms of, you know, the landscape with student loans, given what's going on currently. I tried to get somebody from the Department of Education to be a presenter.
The
But
Federal Department of Education.
yeah, because I thought it'd be good to have someone from the federal, you from the state.
Yeah, they basically
it was-
fired
I
everyone
couldn't-
like 3
I
weeks
could-
ago.
Right.
I mean,
and I couldn't get
not
through to
literally
anybody.
everyone. There is still somebody who there. Christian is the brand new student loan ombudsman.
Yeah, everything just got so topsy-turvy that it was, I just said, you know, I think what we have is fine. So yeah, so that's you know, really it. I really again appreciate this. Our committee is a brand new committee. It just started this year, the Government and Public Interest Lawyers Committee. It is a new committee for the Baltimore County Bar Association. So this was something that committee members wanted to have this year. So I'm glad as a committee we were able to make it happen, and that you all agreed to present. So I really appreciate that, sincerely.
I'm
Okay.
gonna let the people in who are waiting, and then
Yep, let
Janine,
them in.
we have, you know, 30 some people registered, you know, they probably won't all show, but, you know, just keep an eye on how many attendees, and then I would just get started when you're comfortable. Usually it's a
Rachel,
couple
are you
minutes.
gonna let people in if they come? Because, you know, maybe some people may.
Yeah, no,
be
I'm gonna
wrapping up.
continue to let people in, yeah, yep.
Okay.
I'll
I wasn't
watch.
sure if I
You
needed
just
to be looking
watch,
at something.
now just watch the numbers, yep.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Who's going first? What's the order?
I guess what I'll start off, Amy, do you, since Amy, you have some materials or to present to share, I'll have you go first. Bill, I'll have you go second. Stacy, why don't you go third? Susan, last but certainly not least. And we have people showing, I see some familiar names. Welcome all. I'm hoping some people be brave and show their video. I know it's lunchtime. Hi, Amy. Thank you for everything, Amy. Hi, Ben. Let's see, I see Catherine. I don't know Frank. Hi, Frank. Nathan, I know. Nathan and I work together. Thanks for
Very
coming.
hard, very hard work.
Hi, Taylor. Hi, Valerie. Hi, Carmelo.
Hello.
We're just giving probably like a couple of more minutes just to allow people to sign on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, it's like more people. Let's see. Welcome, Deanna. And I see Daria Holloman. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Welcome. Ifra Ransom. Hello.
Ifra.
Ifra, thank you for correcting me. Ifra, welcome. Thank you for coming. Hi, Michael.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm okay. Thanks for coming. We're just giving it a couple more minutes to allow people to sign in.
Great.
Oh, hi, Hudson. Thanks for joining us. My screen is moving. Hi, Sophia. Thank you for joining us. Give it another 2 more minutes, 1 to 2 more minutes, and then we'll get started. And if other people join, Rachel and or Amy will let them into the group. Okay, thank you, Amy. We'll start in 1 minute, keeping me on point. I'm so excited. I want to make sure we get everybody in. All right. All righty, so you know what, we're just gonna get started. First of all, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Janine Scott. I work at Maryland Legal Aid. I'm the chief attorney of the Baltimore County office. I'm also the chair of the Baltimore County Bar Association's Government and Public Interest Lawyers Committee. It's a brand new committee that was started this bar year, approved by the executive leadership. And I'm really super excited to have this student loan presentation today because it came as a result of the feedback from committee members on something that should be done that would be of interest to those of us who do work in government and public interest law. So I'm gonna introduce our speakers. What I'm gonna ask everybody is we're gonna allow each of the presenters to do their presentations first. They'll each be talking for about 15 minutes or so. And then after each presenter speaks, then I'll open it up to allow attendees to ask whatever questions that you want. If you don't want to orally ask your questions, you have the ability to put your question in the chat. I will do my best to monitor the chat to make sure that everyone's questions who wrote them in the chat gets answered. And I'm sure Rachel and or Amy will also make sure if I miss a chat question that it gets asked. So without any further ado, I'm going to start off by introducing our presenters. So we have Stacy Amparo. Stacy is senior trial counsel with the Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office. She's worked in the office for the past 17 years, handling everything from misdemeanor traffic cases to complex child sex abuse and homicide cases. With a focus on sex trafficking, Stacy has made numerous trips to the Maryland legislature to advocate for new laws that enhance victims' experience and outcomes with respect to these cases. She's a member of the Baltimore County Human Trafficking Work Group and the Maryland Human Trafficking Task Force. Ms. Amparo and her husband have paid off their student loan debt through the public loan forgiveness program. And she'll definitely be sharing her journey to student loan debt freedom. We also have Miss Amy Hennon. Amy, we also worked together at Maryland Legal Aid many years ago, but Amy right now currently serves as the Assistant Commissioner for Policy and the Maryland State Loan Ombudsman at the Office of Financial Regulation. Established by the Financial Consumer Protection Act of 2018, the Student Loan Ombudsman monitors student loan servicing activity in Maryland and liaises between student loan borrowers and servicers to resolve or refer complaints for resolution, civil enforcement, or criminal prosecution. The ombudsman's position exists to provide student loan borrowers with a state-level office that can assist with complaints against student loan servicers. Working with the commissioner's staff, the ombudsman provides information about student loan processes and works with borrowers and their loan servicers to correct mistakes and facilitate solutions to problems. Amy brings more than 15 years of experience in private and public sector law and consumer finance, including 2 years with the Office of Financial Regulation. Prior to joining the office, Amy managed the advocacy, workforce, housing, and consumer initiatives for the Maryland Volunteer Lawyers Service. In her work, she assisted borrowers facing a variety of debts, including student loan debt. Prior to her work in nonprofits, Amy was a staff attorney at a debt collection law firm and at a debt settlement law firm as well. In 2022, Amy received the Lawyer of the Year award from the Bar Association of Baltimore City's Government and Public Interest Lawyers Committee. Amy holds a Juris Doctor from the University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law and has a Bachelor of Arts in History from the University of Denver. Next, we have Susan Parks, who currently is the supervising assistant attorneys general, Baltimore County Child Support Administration Office. Following Susan's graduation from the University of Baltimore School of Law and admission to the bar in 1992, Sue went into private practice focusing on family law. She joined the Office of the Attorney General, working part-time at their Howard County Office of Child Support in July of 2000. She transferred full-time in December 2003 to the Baltimore County Office of Child Support Enforcement, where she has been a supervising attorney since July of 2015. She has conducted training in various subjects concerning child support to the Maryland Joint Council of Child Support. the Maryland Child Support Attorneys Conferences, and several bar associations, as well as to attorneys and agency staff. In her spare time, Sue loves being a nanny to her 2 amazing grandsons, and she has a granddaughter that's on the way. Is she here yet? Your
In about
granddaughter?
2 weeks.
All right, all right. Susan has successfully assisted her children in navigating their student loans to enable them to also get student loan forgiveness, and they're done with student loans as well. And last but certainly not least, we have Bill Steinweidel, who is the Deputy Advocacy Director for Homeownership Preservation with the Maryland Legal Aid Bureau's Foreclosure Legal Assistance Project. His current practice focuses on representing clients in Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 bankruptcies and foreclosure mediations in order to help people save their homes. He also represents clients in expungements and assists in legal aid outreach programs. Prior to working at Maryland Legal Aid, Bill, he worked for 2.5 years as an associate at Mellihay and Associates, which is a general practice firm in which he practiced primarily bankruptcy, family, and employment law. Prior to that, he spent about 1.5 years as an associate at Bender and Radcliffe, PA, a medical collections firm. He's a 2007 graduate of Washington College and a 2010 graduate of Georgetown University Law Center. He's also an enrolled agent with the IRS, and he's been doing that since January of 2017. And he also volunteers with the Baltimore Cash campaign during tax season, preparing tax returns for low-income communities. He is the past president of the Consumer Bankruptcy section of the Maryland State Bar Association. And he's also a past winner of the Alan Belsky Award for contributions to the section. He's also currently the co-chair of the Ocean City Committee for the Consumer Bankruptcy section, and he'll be a moderator for their program this year. Bill also, in his work as a consumer attorney at Maryland Legal Aid, has also worked with individuals who had student loan issues. And so he's going to share information about how student loans and bankruptcy and the impact. So I want to thank again all of our guests for being here. We're all looking forward to learning from each of you. We're going to start off with the first presentation from Amy Hennon.
Thanks, Janine. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. The other thing that I'm going to say is that although I am certainly happy to answer questions, when I have given presentations like this in the past, I have received rather personal questions. And so I would encourage you, I'm going to, at the conclusion, I'm going to give everyone my email address. If you have questions about your specific student loan situation, I would actually encourage you to reach out to me by email, and we can have a separate conversation that will not involve the discussion of any of your private details. So thank you, Janine, for that intro. I only vaguely regret giving you such a long bio. I am the state student loan ombudsman. And as Janine said, I am responsible for being a liaison between student loan borrowers and their servicers. My office also takes complaints. The Office of Financial Regulation, which regulates debt collection, of which student loan debt collection is a component of regular debt collection, is housed within the Maryland Department of Labor. I'm a standard disclaimer for any government person ever talking to you ever. There it is. This is not legal advice. A little bit about what I'm going to talk about. But so my office, the Office of Financial Regulation, we regulate a variety of industries in the state of Maryland, and including we charter state chartered banks and credit unions. And then we do a lot of work on non-depository, so not banks, financial services, and debt collection is certainly one of those. And then the student loan ombudsman is also, of course, housed within my office. My hope is I should be able to provide this presentation to you all, but there's a link in here if you want to know more about what industries are regulated by my office. But this is also housed on the website that is located at you can see at the bottom of the slide there. This is all the exciting stuff that Janine mentioned in the bio about what it is that the student loan ombudsman does. Certainly the most important thing one of the most important things that I do is talk to student loan borrowers that are experiencing either frustrations or confusion with their student loans. In addition to a report that I provide to the legislature every year, my office provides a more general report on the activities, and then I specifically provide a specific report on student loans. These are all housed again on the Office of Financial Regulation website. Part of the way that I'm able to do the work that I do is that I'm able to use the additional help from the Consumer Services Unit. Our Consumer Services Unit takes complaints from on a variety of topics, including those all of the things that all of the entities that we regulate. We take complaints related to those issues. You've got an issue with your mortgage servicer, that's a complaint that you could file with my office. If you have a complaint regarding your student loan servicer, it's a complaint you can file with my office. And so we have a couple of members of that unit that are specifically trained on dealing with student loan issues. And then I offer calls and video chat when it's appropriate for the situation to kind of talk people through. I've done a variety of screen sharing with folks where we sort of walk through what your studentaid.gov account looks like in the event that you're trying to navigate kind of what the situation is with your loans. Because I'm going to get into a couple things in a little bit where knowing whether you have direct loans or FFEL loans is something that you want to know. And if you don't know, you can always look at your studentaid.gov account. Everyone who has student loans, everyone who has federal student loans has a studentaid.gov account. You just might need to go through the forgot my password, forgot my username process in order to be able to see it. So the email in order to reach me is here on the screen, studentloan.ombudsman@maryland.gov. And so you can reach out to me there with questions. And then there's also the complaint process is available. Either we have a complaint form that you can download and email in, mail in, etc. Drop off in person. And then there is a web form in order to be able to submit a student loan complaint as well. So I know that this group has particular interest in public service loan forgiveness. We have a number of resources on our website that specifically relate to public service loan forgiveness. I will say that in the last maybe like 2 months, some of the information has become a little bit outdated, and we're in the process of updating it. Anything that you see that refers to like the SAVE plan, that's over. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but in any sense, these are the standard requirements for being able to get public service loan forgiveness. It's a 10-year repayment plan. You have to have 30 hours or more. That's what's considered a full-time job. You can cobble together 30 hours by 2 different part-time jobs that equal 30 hours or more. You must be employed by a qualifying entity. And so some things that maybe you wouldn't necessarily think about, if you work for the United Nations, that does not qualify. That's not considered a qualifying employer. But if you work for a federal, state, local government, or most nonprofits, that would also qualify. You do have to have in order for the federal government to forgive your loans, they have to be owned by your loans. If you have FFEL loans, Federal Family Education Loans, that means that a private bank or hedge fund or something like that is actually the technical owner behind the loans, even though they are federal student loans. And so folks have had to go through consolidation processes in order to move from this FFEL loan to having a direct loan. Apparently there was going to be another presenter that was going to talk about some frustrations that he experienced, most likely because he had FFEL loans and wasn't able to get access to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. There have been a couple of periods where it was possible to consolidate and still get credit for the previous work that you had done, but there was a rather lengthy period where folks did not qualify and couldn't qualify, and if they consolidated their loans, they would have to, so it would restart the clock. Things have sort of ebbed and flowed in that regard, and so if you have FFEL loans and you need to consolidate because you're thinking about this, that's a conversation that we should have to figure out kind of where things are for you in the moment. This is one of the things that has changed a bunch. So what are the qualifications? It's basically there's four pieces that are there is required. It's this 120 months of qualifying employment, and you have to have the nexus of employment plus the payment. There are other things besides payment that technically count as a payment, but you have to generally be in a qualifying repayment plan when you're making these payments. And so that is going to be an income-driven repayment plan or the standard 10-year repayment plan. The standard 10-year repayment plan would generally mean that at the conclusion of those 10 years, you would have actually paid everything off. However, because we just had this period of the COVID forbearance, that might mean that you had several years where you actually had credit that was given to you for non-payment, and so you would still be on that 10-year timeline. Things that don't count as a payment. If you have in-school deferment, the repayment grace period, the 6-month repayment grace period after you leave school, there are a couple of types of deferment and there are a couple of types of forbearance that don't count towards public service loan, that don't count as a qualifying payment. There are other kinds of deferment and forbearance that do count. And again, if there are specific questions that you have about how to figure this out, towards the end of last year, lots of things have changed, but you should be able to see much more clearly the count that you have in your studentaid.gov account for both public service loan forgiveness and potential IDR forgiveness. So what kind of payment plans would qualify? So there was a court case that happened where there was some decisions that came out just recently. They're going to do away with the SAVE plan. This was the most affordable and most reasonable option for most people, and it's not going to be available anymore. Of the remaining repayment options, IBR, income-based repayment, is the only one that's technically written into the statute, and is most certainly going to stick around. SAVE was technically under the ICR sort of rulemaking that had happened with the Department of Education in the last few years, and so it's sort of hard to say exactly at this point what things are going to really look like. We should have a better idea in the coming, let's just say, months, what payment plans are going to be available. So I mentioned before about the 10-year repayment plan. Things that folks think might be qualifying payment plans and are not qualifying payment plans include the extended repayment plan. And so that's normally like a 25-year repayment plan when you have loans over a certain size. If you have that, or if you have the graduated repayment plan, both of those are not considered income-driven repayment for the purposes of public service loan forgiveness and won't get you qualifying payments towards what you're looking for here. So again, I mentioned that there are a bunch of resources on the Office of Financial Regulation's website. including a steps document that lays everything out very clearly about how to apply for public service loan forgiveness. The search that's linked here is you would use your W-2, the employer EIN that would tell you exactly, that would tell you one way or another whether your employer qualified. The search can be a little bit tricky if you tell it that you still work there. This is one of the funny things about this search system. If you tell it that you work there through the end of 2024, or maybe through the or 2023, kind of depending on when you ask it, it will tell you definitively one way or the other. There are some times where it's like, well, we don't have this, there's not the certification for this year that this organization is an appropriate whatever organization that would qualify for public service loan forgiveness. And so it might tell you, oh, well, we can't tell you one way or another whether it's an employer. But if you look at it for some time in the past, it should be able to give you a definitive answer about whether your employer was a public service loan forgiveness qualifying employer. It says apply to consolidate if appropriate. Again, if you're thinking about consolidating, maybe we should have a conversation first because things have changed a lot. I'm going to just touch real briefly on income-driven repayment. This is another form of forgiveness that was rolled out during the Biden administration and is a little bit in jeopardy. But you may have if you log into your studentaid.gov account on the right-hand side, maybe like at least half a scroll down, you might be able to see how many qualifying payments you have towards this 20 or 25-year repayment forgiveness. The 20 or 25-year differentiation comes down to generally whether we're talking about undergrad or graduate student loans. And if you were to say consolidate all of your student loans now, they would be given there would be a weighted average that would have to do with how long it was going to potentially take and what things you would potentially qualify for. And then just I think an important flag for anybody that is facing maybe some difficulty repaying their student loans. It is possible to get into, if your economic hardship is serious enough, you can get a payment that is low as $0, and that counts as a monthly payment. You have to recertify. But if your loans default, or the defaulted period will not count towards, and you won't be eligible to apply for public service loan forgiveness. Instead, you may have to go through effectively a rehabilitation process. And this is yet another thing that has changed a lot in the last couple of years. So just a blanket way to talk about things that are happening at the Department of Ed now. Slower processing times, things are changing regularly. But if you have an issue that you are experiencing with your federal student loans, you can and should still submit complaints to federal student aid. Even if, I mean, the department still exists as it is right now. It doesn't necessarily function the same, but putting in a record of the issue that you're experiencing is important to do. Folks are obviously still welcome to file complaints with my office. And something I actually learned recently is, in fact, the CFPB complaint system still functions, even if the CFPB is in its own sort of questionable state. As long as you have properly put in the name of the entity that you have the complaint about. And so this is, the CFPB accepts complaints about federal and private student loans. And so if you have an issue with your private student loan lender, you're still able to file a complaint with the CFPB. The way that their system works is that as long as you spell the name right, the complaint will actually will be sent directly to the company. It doesn't stop with someone at the CFPB taking a look at it. And so because there's this automatic referral process to the company, their complaint system is still working even with things in flux over there as well. And then the last thing that I'll say is that I have heard / seen firsthand that even when perhaps you're not getting movement from other avenues, making a complaint to your U.S. Congressperson can also result in some positive feedback or some positive results. So those are all things to know about the way that the process is working. These are linked resources, but these are all on, these are all on the, except for the search is all on the OFR's website. And so hopefully I'll be able to send this around. There's some general information. Again, studentloan.ombudsman@maryland.gov is the email that you're looking for there. So I will stop sharing and turn it over to Bill.
Thank you so much, Amy. This was really informative. Bill?
Yes, just. So, hello, my name is William Simon. I'm the Deputy Advocacy Director for Home Ownership Preservation at the Maryland Legal Aid Bureau. I do a lot of different consumer stuff, mostly connected to foreclosure, but not always. And one of the things that we started to take sort of more of a in the last few years, and hopefully we can continue to do it in the next period of time, is student loan discharges in bankruptcy. So student loans used to be nearly impossible to discharge in bankruptcy. This is a picture of where I had took the conference when the law changed, so it's a really nice place. It's in Colorado. It's the Broadmoor, and we got a very serious discount at the National Association of Consumer Bankruptcy Attorneys. There's no way I could have afforded to stay there on my own dime, that's for sure. So most of you probably, even those who don't practice bankruptcy, probably know that generally student loans aren't dischargeable in bankruptcy. And the reason is that 11 USC 523 states what's dischargeable in bankruptcy and it's part of the bankruptcy code. And A8 states that that basically you have to prove an undue hardship to discharge student loan debt. So the one thing is the history of this law is pretty interesting in that at the time, student loans were discharged after 7 years in bankruptcy, so they were similar to taxes. So it's interesting that now it's somehow become forever. But that was that is as it is. That was a change in the law in the mid-90s. But the case law that determines if student loans are discharged was still the same. It's the Bruner case. Basically, a debtor has to demonstrate by showing that they cannot maintain a minimal standard of living if required to pay the student loans, that it's not likely to ever change, and that they have made a good faith efforts to pay back their student loans. Judge Gordon, who used to be a bankruptcy judge in Baltimore Division, once said that getting a student loan discharge was as hard as a canary flying through a crack in the window. So it was pretty impossible from the mid 1980s all the way till 2022. Private student loan debt is still the same. It's still under the Bruner test, so it's nearly impossible to discharge private student loan debt in a bankruptcy. So you just have to work out a settlement outside or refinance outside of bankruptcy. So there's really still not much but in regards to federal student loan debt, in 2022, the U.S. Department of Education issued new guidelines to the U.S. Department of Justice regarding the challenging of bankruptcy discharges. Basically, what they said is that if a debtor submitted an affidavit, so not to get too much into the bankruptcy weeds, but you have to file a separate proceeding from your bankruptcy filing called an adversary proceeding in the case to challenge the discharge of the student loans. But if the person filed an affidavit with their student loans and demonstrated that there was an undue hardship, DOJ was instructed not to oppose the student loan discharge, even despite the fact that Bruner is still the law of the land. So what this, so there were some limits though. Federal, it's again, federal student debt loan only, it's not private student loan debt. It has to be done as an adversary proceeding. It is never guaranteed. And this is the most important caveat. As you could see from the previous picture, this passed under the previous administration. It is only an executive order, it is not a law. It is not PSLF. PSLF was actually created as a result of a law into congressional act in 2007. This is not a congressional act, it is only executive order. So tomorrow, our current leadership could take out one of his menus and basically end it tomorrow. Now that hasn't happened yet. Hopefully it'll never happen, but it could happen. But the people that have used this theory, approximately 75% have been successful in either a full or partial discharge. And before this, less than 1% of student loan debt was discharged in bankruptcy. So it's definitely helped a great deal. So I didn't want to, I give this presentation also to practitioners, so I didn't want to get too much into adversary proceedings, but that's how you would do it inside of a bankruptcy case. But under the new guidelines, the debtor has to demonstrate that they have no disposable income, that is unlikely to change in the future, and that they've made good faith attempts to pay the bill. So what does that mean in practice? So under these circumstances, it is the assumption that if there's a negative disposable income, that the situation is unlikely to change and that the student loans should be discharged as a matter of law. The debtor is 65 or older. The loans have been in a repayment status for 10 years. The debtor did not obtain the degree for which the loan was procured. There's another portion of that, the school shut down. So it's the same thing. Like basically they didn't get any benefit out of the loans. The debtor has a disability, chronic injury, or chronic medical condition, or the debtor has been unemployed 5 of the last 10 years. So it's still not hugely broad, but it's broader than it was. We've gotten 6 student loan discharges in bankruptcy, so it is possible. It's still difficult, and of course, in Maryland legal aid, our clients tend to be lower income, so it is a little bit easier to establish. But it is a possibility. It is still very difficult though. The debtor has to show that they have made good faith attempts to pay the student loan debt. So that's the last prong after they showed there's negative disposable income, that they fall within one of those categories. This is the easiest one to show. All you have to show is that you either tried to make a payment or that you tried to apply for a payment plan. That alone in and of itself is enough to establish that you've made good faith attempts to pay. So I just wanted to briefly mention, because I know a lot of the people, or almost all of the people on this presentation are attorneys. There is one exception to the bankruptcy discharge provision, which obviously was clearly written by an attorney, because it really doesn't apply to too many other people. I guess it could apply to a doctor. But basically, or maybe a grad student, but basically, if you take out a loan to take a course for a test, aka the bar, or the LSAT, or the SAT, or the MCAT, or whatever, fill in the blank, those student loans are discharged, because what the discharge provision says is that student loans are not dischargeable if they were taken out in connection with the degree or certificate program. Well, obviously, no one gets a degree, at least that I'm aware of, from Barbary or whatever, whoever the test prep officers are. So obviously, those loans would be dischargeable. Now, of course, it can't be mixed with a loan that was related to education. It has to be independent of that, which some people did too, apparently. So if you have those loans, they are dischargeable in bankruptcy. They're also, to build on what Amy was talking about in regards to public service loan forgiveness. If you're in a chapter 13 and you're making a payment, it doesn't have to necessarily be a payment for your student loan, but you're making a payment on a payment plan. That is considered a payment towards PSLF forgiveness. So, as of July 1st, 2024, and to my knowledge, this rule has not been revoked. So basically, if you're in a chapter 13 plan and you're making payments, those payments count towards that 10-year determination. Also, I did want to briefly just mention total and permanent disability. So there's a forgiveness program inside of the Department of Education where if you're totally and permanently disabled, and it's a federal student loan, they may forgive it. There are some other ones like identity theft and et cetera, but so that's my contact information. I also put my email in the chat, but so I didn't want to get too much into the bankruptcy weeds, for those that don't practice, bankruptcy. But that's basically, but there is a ability to discharge student loans in bankruptcy as of today. Now, could that change tomorrow? Yes, literally it could change tomorrow, but at this point, it is still in place as of today. So.
Thank you, Bill. Definitely really helpful information. Bill, are your slides available to the attendees?
I did send them to you beforehand, but I can send them to you again. Yes, you can get that. They've been passed around many times. So.
Okay, all right, I'll make sure the group gets it. Thank you again. Now we're going to turn it over to Stacy Ampora, who is going to share, in just, real life terms, her student loan journey and experience and how she is now student loan debt free. Take it away, Stacy.
Thank you, Janine. I'm here. I don't have a PowerPoint, but hopefully I can give you a little bit of hope. It was a long road. I graduated law school from University of Maryland in 2010. I myself had approximately $120,000 in student loan debt, as well as approximately $10,000 in undergrad student loan debt. So the undergrad student loan debt, that was private debt. I know we were kind of talking about the differences between the private student loan debt and the federal student loan debt. The undergrad debt was approximately $10,000. I think Sallie Mae was the servicer for a while, and then it switched to Navient. In the long run, I ended up consolidating all of it with my federal student loan debt under the direct loan program. Not only did I have a ton of student debt, my then fiance, coming out of medical school, had a boatload of student debt, to the tune of probably over $300,000. So we knew that when we both graduated, it was going to be uncomfortable, and we really had to prioritize the student loan debt in terms of trying to get things paid off. The public student loan forgiveness program wasn't something that I had heard about initially when I had graduated law school. I've been working in the state's attorney's office since approximately 2008. When I started in this office, I wasn't even an attorney at that point. I was a law clerk. So I was a law clerk for 2 years and then graduated law school in 2010, and was basically just hearing some things word of mouth from some other, attorneys in the office who had student loan debt about the public service loan forgiveness program. But going back to what it looked like initially, it's very disheartening to see all of that student loan debt. So the first thing that my then fiance, now husband, did, like I said, we wanted to prioritize it and get it paid off as soon as possible. We essentially sat down and talked to a financial advisor about how we could best tackle things. And taxes and your student loan debt go hand in hand. So we had that person trying to figure out what was the best way for us to file. We both knew that we were going to be eligible for the income-driven repayment. So that is what we opted for. We were both on income-based repayment plans. And once we figured out that we were actually better off filing jointly, and it is, I think, like Amy said, it's a very individual situation. So to sit down and to be able to talk to a person one-on-one who can sort of look at your different options, before that student loan debt comes into repayment, was super helpful, because we were able to figure out that filing jointly was what was going to work best for us, because then our student loan debt is also attributed to each other, and it was going to be able to take a smaller amount of our monthly income. I think there was a max that could be taken from both of our incomes. So that's what worked for us, because we had two people with very large student loan debt. Once we did that, our financial advisor basically said it would be best to set up a dedicated account so that that money was coming directly out of our paychecks and we weren't ever seeing that money. We really, again, just prioritizing things, didn't want to get into a position where, budgeting wise, we weren't going to be able to make it work. So we were able to take the money directly out of our paychecks, have it put in an account, and then make the payments out of that account. For each of us individually. It was at that point we were married. I got married probably, I would say, a couple weeks within graduation from law school. So we were able to set up a joint account, had money coming from both accounts, and then we just set up our loan payments through that account, and we never saw that money. It was like it wasn't even part of our household budget. So at that point, 2-3 years in, I'm hearing about public service loan forgiveness. I'm curious. My husband is curious too, because he's sort of hearing things through the grapevine. My husband is a physician up in York, Pennsylvania, that is considered technically a federally, underserved area in terms of physicians. So, I had called my loan servicer at that point. I can't remember. I think it was Ed Financial at that point. These things change hands so many times and it gets so confusing. But thankfully, for whatever reason, way back then, I'm not sure that this is still the case today. The person on the other end of the phone was super helpful and, really sort of highlighted the steps that I needed to take to become part of the student loan forgiveness program. So once I had gotten all the forms filled out, then, there's a process of certification that your employer has to do. And that has to be done on a yearly basis. So, our HR person here in the office handled all of that for me. It was basically, I had to fill out my part of the form and then hand it off to, the person who does our HR stuff. They were able to certify my employment. Everything was going smoothly. I can't say, the one thing I think that really helped us was sort of looking at our taxes early every year as opposed to waiting to the last minute. It just gave us more time to figure out how much our student loan payments might be increasing. So, again, all sort of budgeting and making sure that, we knew what the coming year was going to look like tax-wise, because we knew that was going to be tied into our income-based repayment. And then COVID hit and we were, the temptation there was, okay, we can stop paying, we can, put everything on pause. Thankfully, both my husband and I were in positions where, our work was, we continued to get a paycheck, not everybody was in that situation. So we actually decided that we just wanted to continue making payments, smaller payments, essentially that would cover the interest on the loan. So we were able to set that up. It's also the point at which I consolidated my undergraduate student loans with my law school loans under the federal direct program. So, months and months and months and months went by during COVID, where, everything was essentially paused with regards to the student loan repayment. That I know a lot of people who just stopped making payments because that was what worked for them. And again, it's a very individual situation. Thankfully, like I said, we still had two incomes coming in. So at least making those interest payments, I think not knowing that our loans were going to be forgiven so soon after the pause in loan repayment, it gave us peace of mind that, it wasn't going to be all this time that went by that, we weren't going to be getting credit for it. I think there was a lot of sort of uncertainty about whether those payments were going to count towards anything, and just a lot of uncertainty in general with what public student loan forgiveness looked like at that point. I had some coworkers, friends in the office who did apply as soon as they were eligible, and I remember going past their office at lunchtime, literally hearing them on the phone with their servicers arguing about how many payments that they had made and that they were actually well past the 120 payments. So keeping track for yourself, making sure you have a record of each of those payments. That's something else that was super helpful. When it came to know when was the time to apply for that student loan forgiveness, and we documented literally in an Excel spreadsheet of when all those payments were made, and would have been able to back it up with all the, electronic records online if we had needed to. But don't take what they're telling you for granted. I would say 100% keep track for yourself, because I know quite a few people that ran into that issue where they were literally fighting over how many student loan payments they had made. So, essentially after the pause in student loan, in the pause for COVID, when that happened, after that, my husband and I both, said there was this opportunity at that point to kind of figure out where you were at that point in terms of your student loans. And it involved a bit of an application process, the recertification of employment and all of that, a bunch of paperwork. I think you had to not only submit the paperwork online, but then you also had to fax the paperwork. So, making sure that you're following all the procedures, and you might be thinking, why am I sending this twice? But that's what they wanted. That's what we did. So, things were basically, I feel like, in the ether for about 6 months after we did that. And payments still coming out at that point. And it was maybe probably, I would say, somewhere in that 6 to 8 month mark. My husband got a letter first from, and you get so many, I feel like, paper statements in the mail. You're just like, oh, this is just another paper statement. At that point, the servicer had changed to Mohila. So, we're just figuring, okay, this is another piece of paper with, what it looks like, not anything. We'd been waiting to hear where we stood in terms of our number of payments. But I mean, it said congratulations. And, I just saw the look of relief on my husband's face when he got his letter. My letter came probably not even 6 weeks later. And we started, repayment pretty close to around the same time. I think I got credit for a few extra payments based on the little $77 payments I was making on that undergrad student loan that I had consolidated with my law school loans. So, at the end of the day, every little bit helps. And, with some planning and with some, essentially keeping track of things yourself and not allowing, the system to just keep track of it for you. There is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. It's pretty intimidating, I know, when you see that big balance when you log into your student loan account. But it chips away little by little, and public service loan forgiveness really got my husband and I to a place where we can say that we are student loan debt free, which is not something either one of us thought we would be able to ever say. So it's a worthwhile program, and just take the time to sort of figure out your individual situation and make sure you're doing what works best for you, and don't stop asking questions. Even if you're driving the person on the other end of the phone crazy, don't stop asking questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Wow. So finally, we have Sue Parks, who's going to also talk about how she was able to, assist, her children in navigating student loans. So the floor is yours, Sue.
All right, I'll try to keep it brief because I know everybody's got to get back to work. Basically, 2 of my 3 kids did go to 4-year colleges and had to take out some loans, and we did the direct parent plus loans. So the loans were in my name, since obviously I was the one earning money. Both of those 2 children went on to become teachers. So we knew they weren't going to have a lot of money to work with. So I took them out in my name. My oldest daughter graduated out of Notre Dame back in 2013, and my son out of the University of Delaware in 2015. Like when I went to college, I graduated in 88 out of Loyola, and I graduated out of UB in 92. There wasn't such a thing as this. So it was great when I had it. I'm just going to give you guys a couple real quick tips that I found doing it. Back when my kids were doing it, we did the income contingency, the ICR repayment plan. And actually I had to file separate from my husband. This wasn't a situation of which way would work better. This was, I didn't get a choice in it. Now I think that sounds like it's changed, but back then it didn't. And that was something we had to consider because that was a hit every year. We took a tax hit for the kids, but we were willing to do it. So it is very big. You got to remember to recertify annually for the that your employer recertifies that yes, you've still been employed, and it is done annually. Best thing I did was kind of just tickled it on a calendar, so I knew every year. I always did it in July because that was my start date, was July 1 with the state, so that's when I would do it. So I kind of keep track of it. I was originally through, I think it was Fed Loan Servicing, which later became MOHELA, which was our servicers. And yes, I agree with it. I tracked what their payments were. I would go online to kind of make sure their numbers match my numbers. As it got closer, yes, I would be calling all the time to bug them to try to figure out things. So definitely keep up with it. And as it got towards the end, because I did consolidate, I had 2 separate kids on there. So they had me as like loan sequence 1 and then loan sequence 2. So obviously my daughter, she graduated 2 years before her brother. So obviously hers came out quicker. As we got closer to the time when you knew the payment was going to be, you'd hit your 120. They gave me great advice from MOHELA to put in for a forbearance. I still made payments, but we put in for the forbearance. That way, when you hit your 120, you then have to apply with the public service that you're asking for the loan forgiveness. You check off the little box that says, I believe I have made the 120 payments. It did take them a while to process it. So asking for the forbearance kind of was a little bit better so that it wasn't hitting your credit or anything like that. With hers, we actually wound up overpaying. We actually paid 121, and I will say that they actually refunded that extra payment back. It gets refunded into whatever account that it comes out of. It went back into. So that was good to know. Although it did take them a long time to do it, and a lot of calls going, "Hey, have you put that through? Have you put that through? Have you put that through?" But it did eventually come through. So when we got to my son's coming up, I knew to ask for the forbearance earlier so we wouldn't overpay. And then that did take a really, really long time to make the decision, because it was then switching who was making the decision. Was it MOHELA? No, it was federal student aid. It went back and forth so many times of who made the decision. So it took a long time. I'd had to keep calling for the forbearance to have it extended, but it did eventually come through. And yes, I got the lovely, you're forgiven. And it was like 105,000, I think, for University of Delaware, and about 55 for Notre Dame. So yes, my 2 teacher children are very happy, because the deal was mom takes this out in her name, but you're paying it, not mom. So they were very happy. And my oldest daughter is actually going through, because she took out her grad school portion in her name. And as a teacher, she's going through it now. I think she's only got a couple payments left. So hopefully nothing will happen to the program before she gets through it, but it is worthwhile. But you do just make sure you keep track of it. We're all lawyers. Be anal about it. Track it all. Don't be afraid to make calls. I made a lot of calls to my servicer, but yeah, they were wonderful, to be honest with you. They were great to talk to. But you do have to kind of keep up on them. So good luck to everybody.
Thank you so much, Sue. Again, another more helpful and practical information. It's 1:02 right now, so I'm going to open up the floor to anyone who has any questions that you want to ask our presenters. Again, feel free to put your question in the chat if you don't want to speak orally.
And I apologize if some of you heard an echo. I apologize. I wasn't aware of it. There was an echo.
I was still able to hear you fine. Does anybody have any questions? Well, I'll start it off. Amy, do you have a lot of people who reach out to you just regarding private student loans, or is your focus as the ombudsman more for the federal ones?
I have folks reach out to me about both. Just statistically, there are lots more folks with federal student loans than there are with private student loans, but they certainly exist. The other thing that I'll say is that, well, this was certainly more true last year than in this exact moment, but the sort of options that are available to you if you have federal student loans versus private student loans are different, and with private student loans are indeed more limited. But there are potentially still options for reaching out to your service provider and asking for either flexibility, a different payment plan, some sort of forbearance, et cetera. They are not required to give it to you the way that that there are regulations that specifically require such things of your federal service, federal student service, student loan servicers. And then also, your private student loan servicer may be the same entity as your federal student loan servicer. MOHELA recently started doing private student loan servicing when they received, as Stacy was sort of talking about, the transition from Sallie Mae to Navient, and now Navient has been banned from federal student loan servicing, and so their portfolio entirely shifted to almost entirely shifted to MOHELA. It did get spread around a bit, and MOHELA has started doing private student loan servicing as well, as a result of all of that.
Well, and just also additional, on average, how long does it take for someone's complaint to be resolved? whether they're happy about the resolution or not, but how long would somebody kind of anticipate for the process to take?
Honestly, that really depends on what the issue is and what kind of resolution we're working towards. If it's something where action needs to be taken by the U.S. Department of Education, which is the case for a lot of folks that are working towards public service loan forgiveness, there's been something that has been miscounted. There's some other sort of issue. That can certainly take longer. If there's a sort of more straightforward issue about perhaps interest rate calculation or something like that, interest calculation, that is perhaps a sort of quicker resolution, or can be anyway.
I'm just trying to look to make sure anyone has their hands up or wants to chime in with a question. I'm also looking on the chat. Do we have a quiet bunch here? Well, let me also ask you, Stacy, how were you? I know you said that you had your student loan payments like taken out and placed into an account, or from your paycheck and placed into an account, and you paid for there. But on like the day-to-day stuff, how were you able, working in public interest, both you and your husband, able to, handle your other day-to-day bills, like your housing, your utilities, and I'm sure you guys want to do some fun things and not
Yeah.
have all of your money going to bills and payments. How were you able to, have that balance with your finances?
Yeah, so I mean, life is going on the entire time. People need cars, people need housing, all that stuff. So, again, really just a lot of planning. I'm not sure how else to say it, but we didn't buy a house right away, because that didn't work financially for us because we already had a mortgage and our student loan debt. So, we had to really sort of sit down and figure out what we wanted to prioritize. There did come a time when we had saved enough for the down payment on the house that we wanted, but it wasn't something that happened instantly because like I said, you have to balance all the other stuff too, the wanting to have a vacation every once in a while, and being able just to make the day-to-day stuff meet, in terms of all of your electric bill, you still have that stuff even when you rent. So it really was just a lot of planning. It worked for us to have a joint account that we could sit down and we could budget out monthly expenses. And again, it's not something that works for everybody. It's very individual. A lot of people like to just split the bills and you pay this and I pay this. And there was that recognition that, my husband had a much larger portion of the student loan bill payment. So where I was able to help with things like the utility bills. So we were able to sort of balance things out that way. And then, I would say even with all the student loan debt, having a savings, it's still important. You still want to be putting money away. They always say pay yourself first. And we were able to have that savings because we planned for it and we budgeted it out, moving forward, knowing that we had those huge student loan payments. But again, we worked off of the amount of money that, we had post the student loan payments because that was out of sight, out of mind. That money was coming out and it was kept completely separate. So, that gave us a clearer picture of what we actually had to work with on a monthly basis.
Thanks. I see a hand up. Daria, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yeah, thanks, Janine. Hi. First, I just want to say thank you all. This has been great and helpful. And I plan to send an email about my personal circumstance. But there was a brief mention about, I'm kind of like stuck in this, I don't know, whatever's happening with our current administration, where the payments were paused kind of with, it's not recertification, but I think it was like a reconsideration. If someone could speak more about that, about having them like either reconsider or like recount payments to kind of figure, to see if you can get relief that way. If that makes sense. I can try to explain more, but I didn't want to.
So, there are, you could be talking potentially about a couple of different things. At an absolute baseline, folks that were in what was at the time called the Repay program was then transitioned to the Save program. And then the Save program was put onto a litigation pause in July of last year. And the agreement that the Department of Education entered into with the court and with the plaintiffs, which include Mohila, were that it would be a no interest period that folks no interest, no payment period that folks on the Save plan currently would be put into, but also they wouldn't accrue any additional time towards public service loan forgiveness or any other sort of forgiveness plan. So if you're working towards IDR or public service loan forgiveness, the Save months don't necessarily count. Sorry, the Save plan litigation pause doesn't necessarily count. Some folks applied for a new IDR plan in order to be able to be put into some new repayment plan, so that they could resume getting their months count towards public service loan forgiveness, et cetera. And so you would have put in an application for that. There's another thing that you could be talking about, which is there's the public service loan forgiveness. Why is this word suddenly escaping me? But where you ask for it to go back and count the months that you were employed but couldn't make payments because of a certain reason. And you ask for a calculation based on how much you should have to pay in order to have those months count for you. That plan was, like, the calculation for that was definitely being done by somebody who left the department in the last couple of months. And although there was some work, I believe, done to try to keep doing that, I think that's entirely fallen off with the recent changes in the last couple of months. So, and that is one of the programs that I would just, like, not speaking as the student loan ombudsman, but just speaking as a human being, like, I would suspect that is going to be one of the things that the Trump administration is likely to do away with. But of course, the other thing is that the calculation for that, it cannot be based on the Save plan. It has to be based on whatever the new income-based repayment plan is going to be. And since they haven't released any of that, you can't get access to that right now for what that should be. Is any of the things that I just said answering your question, or is the situation different? Do you want to reach out to me separately?
Yeah, I'll still reach out to you, kind of all of the above, but I kind of was in the situation, literally my 120th payment was supposed to be July of last year. So I'm sitting at 119, and I have not been, like, I haven't made a payment because I'm not in a plan that will count. Like, I was, switched to Save, all of those things. So I'm kind of like, I've like tried every way I could figure out to be like, listen, please take my money so I can just be done. So now it seems like I recently heard that, I guess, IDR is, like, I couldn't even apply to switch. So I think now I can apply to re-enroll in another plan and hopefully make that last payment. But essentially, I'm just trying to figure out how to get my 120th payment and
of course,
be done with the student loan. So that's why I said I'll email you separately. But that's kind of the situation.
Yeah.
And I was told to do the buyback program, but then they were like, nope, that's not applicable. So, like, I've done all the things, and I'm just trying to figure it out.
The complications with the buyback program is everything that I just described with So theoretically, you are eligible for the buyback program, except there's nobody there to do the calculation, and whatever numbers they're supposed to use for the calculation don't currently exist. So you've got 2 levels of hurdles there for the buyback. And so anybody that is in your position is definitely going to need to apply for a new income driven repayment plan. I believe that the application was recently made live, like the last couple of days. And you can get we should have a separate conversation about all of this, but as a general blanket, you're going to have to reapply for a different income driven repayment plan to kind of force that transition to happen quicker. Most folks are supposed to be transitioned out of the save litigation pause that everyone is in, but because you're at that point, you don't want to just sit here and wait forever for that to happen.
Thank you.
Good question. Good question. Sue, I'm curious, because you said you had the Parent Plus loan. I don't know if there's any attendees who also have loans that their parents took out for them, but they have to pay it back. What would you advise is like the level of conversations or financial entanglement parents should have with their children, many of whom are, adult children, but, have these Parent Plus loans? How much, entanglement should they have in order to make sure that these loans, number one, are getting paid off and that you're choosing the best repayment option?
Well, I think with the Parent Plus loans, because back when I went to college, that wasn't a thing. I mean, the loan went out in my name, even though like I'm 18, like where am I getting the money from? But sure, it went out in your own name, so that was a lot different than when my kids went. Then it was this Parent Plus thing, and the loans didn't go out in their names. They all went in the parents' names. And, you have to assume, because let's face facts, that was all on my credit because it's the loans in my name. So if they didn't make a payment, it went on me. And you as the parent, before you even take that loan, have to be willing to, yes, I will handle that loan. And you have to know that's going to fall on you. I mean, my conversations with my kids, my children have all worked since they were 16, part-time jobs and all. That's just how my husband and I instilled in them, because that's what we did. And, it was just a conversation of, hey, I don't mind taking it out, but, you make the payments. And they were agreeable to that, because then when I found out about the forgiveness, public service forgiveness, which I found by one of my attorneys working in my office, she had it for herself. And I was like, oh, let me look into this. And that made it easier, because they were like, okay, I only have to do it for 10 years and then it gets wiped out because of mom. So, but that's a conversation you have to have with your kids. But ultimately, you have to be willing to pay it, because it is going to be in your name if it's parent loan. So if they don't make a payment, it is on you. I just luckily instilled enough in them that they paid it without issues. So.
And I guess I just have a final question. Bill, would you, just in general, is a Chapter 13 bankruptcy strategic for a borrower who is having a hard time negotiating with their servicer a reasonable payment plan? Would you recommend that someone consider a Chapter 13 if they really were trying to get their payments more manageable for their student loans?
Well, so basically what a Chapter 13 would do is that it would freeze the situation. So during that period, they couldn't take any adverse action, and they would receive whatever portion of because despite the fact that it's not dischargeable, student loan debt is considered unsecured non-priority debt. So that means it's treated the same as your credit card debt and Chapter 13 or your medical debt. So they would receive that, equitable portion of what's paid to unsecured non-priority. And during that period, they're not allowed to add interest to the loan, and um, they're not permitted to collect. Obviously, that would be a violation of the stay. I would never just file a Chapter 13 for student loan purposes. I think generally it would hurt your credit more than it would help, probably, especially if you don't have a lot of other debt. Like if you don't have a lot of credit card debt, if you don't have a lot of medical debt, if you're not behind on your mortgage, if you don't have, tax debt, things like that, I would probably not advise doing a Chapter 13 just for student loans. But in line with the Chapter 13 maybe for other reasons, it may be helpful because during that period, they're probably more likely to agree to some sort of payment plan because they know during that period they can't collect. So they're basically just sitting. So it'd be better for them to take some money, any money that they can get, as part of your budget in a Chapter 13 than to take no money at all. And then 5 years from now, have to wait to then basically be sitting on a loan for 5 years. And also, if you're in a Chapter 13 with the new rules, which to my knowledge have not been revoked in regards to public interest forgiveness, so basically you're already making a payment. So and bankruptcy Chapter 13 lasts 5 years. So if you complete your Chapter 13 successfully, you're halfway to a PSLF forgiveness without ever having to actually have paid your loan service directly. But I would never advise it just for that reason. But I think in concert, if you have a lot of other issues that the bank chapter, especially if you have tax issues, that's probably the biggest one. The Chapter 13 can help because for those of you who aren't aware, in a Chapter 13, even though tax debt is also not discharged, where you can pay it back without penalties and interest, which is not true of paying back on a payment plan with the IRS. So if you're not eligible for an offer of compromise, and you have student loan debt, I think a Chapter 13 may be a way to go. In addition, Chapter 13 fees are capped at $6,000 for the attorneys, and most of it is paid inside of the plan. So it's not you're not going to end up paying an attorney, a lot more than you would. It's not going to be where you're going to end up paying a litigator for the privilege of paying back your student loans either. But
Thank you.
so as I said, I think as part of a general financial plan, I think it's helpful.
I'm not sure if I hear you, Bill.
As I said, I think it's part of a general financial plan to get out of other debts. It could be helpful, but just for student loan debt, I don't think, because again, these is not dischargeable, and if you're working, it's not very unlikely to be considered dischargeable. So, and younger and working, it's very unlikely that you're going to get a discharge. So,
Thank you, Bill. Well, we're at the end now. I'm just trying to check to see with the remaining attendees if we have any questions. I'm also looking in the chat.
I did want to bring up just one more point that I
Sure,
thought.
absolutely, Bill. Sure.
Also, it might be helpful if I still wouldn't do it just for this, but if you have to file bankruptcy anyway, you can also dispute. It's easier to dispute debt and an objection to claim than it is, through a lawsuit or something like that. So if you have a lot of debt and student loan debt is part of it, and you think that you've made a mistake, you can file an objection to proof of claim, which is a lot cheaper than a lawsuit because it's contained within the bankruptcy itself, so it's not an independent action.
Oh, okay. So that's but that's usually, like you said, in the context of if you have like other debt that.
Yeah, I wouldn't just do it for that purpose, but it is something that's available in a bankruptcy that wouldn't be available.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I'd like to say to Stacy, Sue, Bill, Amy, thank you so much for providing us with so much valuable information. I know some people had to get off because they have court that they have to go to, but again, this was really, really informative. Again, I thank you for your time. You took, to do this presentation, and also to those who are on the Zoom who came out to attend. I also want to say thank you as well. And our Madam President is here, of the Baltimore County Bar Association, President Sandra Douglas. Thank you so much, Sandra, for coming. And Rachel, Amy, again, thank you so much for the support in helping to put this together and get the word out. Thank you very much. And I'm encouraging everyone to be a part of the Government and Public Interest Lawyers Committee. I think we've had a great year. Again, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Great information, Janine. Great to all the speakers. Thank you for putting this on. It's been
You're very
phenomenal.
welcome. You're very welcome. Everyone have a great day.